We were told that JJ McCarthy was going to be a first-round pick, and he was, going to the Vikings at 10 after they traded up to get him. There have certainly been a lot of criticisms about him and questions of whether or not he should even go in the first round, but he was the 5th quarterback off the board after Michael Penix, which was certainly a surprise. Sure, McCarthy didn't put up the craziest numbers playing for Jim Harbaugh, but he played well and won a lot of football games in his time there. He didn't start at all his true freshman year. He backed up Cade McNamara and had just 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions in relief. The next season, the two competed for the starting job through the first 2 games, and McCarthy won it. He went on to throw for 2,700 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions as Michigan lost 1 game, falling to TCU in the college football playoff 51-45. That was the only loss McCarthy suffered as a starter in college. Last season, he had about 3,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. But most importantly, he went 15-0 and led Michigan to a national championship win after beating Alabama and Washington in the college football playoff. He is the greatest quarterback in Michigan football history. And yes, even ahead of Tom Brady. JJ McCarthy is a winner. That's what he did best in Ann Arbor. And the Vikings could use a winner, especially at quarterback. Kirk Cousins has started the past 6 straight years for the Vikings, but last season he tore his Achilles after just 8 games. He was consistently good and pretty expensive. He threw more than 25 touchdowns in his first 5 seasons in Minnesota and took the Vikes to the playoffs twice. It felt like Minnesota kept wanting to move on and improve at the position, but it's not that simple. He's now no longer in Minneapolis and left a huge hole at quarterback, one that general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah filled with Sam Darnold. Darnold spent the last season in San Francisco, but he only started in 1 game, the 49ers' final game of the season. He started 56 games and was once the 3rd overall pick to the Jets back in 2018, so he understands what high expectations feel like. Darnold could be a good mentor for JJ McCarthy or just a bridge quarterback if the Vikings want him to sit and learn. Sam Darnold will likely start week 1. But I'm willing to bet that McCarthy will start at some point. Minnesota also has vet Nick Mullins and took Jaron Hall in the 5th round last year. Quarterback was a big need for the Vikings, and they filled that by drafting JJ McCarthy. It's actually the 3rd time Minnesota has drafted a quarterback in the 1st round since 2011. Like this year, the 2011 NFL Draft had quarterbacks selected at picks 1, 8, 10, and 12. Cam Newton, Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, and Christian Ponder. None of them got a normal rookie offseason because of the lockout. The Vikes traded for Donovan McNabb to mentor Ponder, but McNabb struggled, and Ponder eventually took over starting duties, starting 10 games, throwing for 1,900 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. It wasn't anything spectacular. 2012 was the only year he started every game in a season. Ponder threw for 2,900 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. It was definitely the best season of his pro career. He went into 2013 as the Vikings starter, but got hurt. Matt Castle took over, and the Vikings also signed Josh Freeman. It was a very disappointing year for Ponder. He had 1,600 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, and it only got worse from there. Ponder only started once in 2014, the final start of his NFL career, where he threw 2 picks. The only reason Ponder even started that game was because of an injury to the Vikings' new first-round quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. It's been a decade since it's happened, but yes, the Vikings did take a quarterback in the 1st round 2 times within a 4-year span. Teddy Bridgewater went 32nd overall. He was the 3rd quarterback off the board behind Blake Bortles and Johnny Manziel. Bridgewater started the season backing up Matt Castle, but he broke his foot in week 3, so Bridgewater took over. He went on to start 12 games, throwing for 2,900 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 12 picks. He started in every game for the Vikes the following season, and Bridgewater made the Pro Bowl after he had 3,200 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. The Vikings won the NFC North, but lost in the wild card to the Seahawks in one of the coldest games in NFL history. And yes, I'm talking about the game where Blair Walsh iconically missed a 27-yard field goal. Bridgewater had a bright future in Minnesota, but then he tore his ACL and suffered structural damage with a dislocation of the knee joint. He never started again for the Vikings. He was injured on August 30th, 2016, and he didn't play again until December 17th, 2017. He got a standing ovation in relief of Case Keenum the last time he stepped on the field as a Viking. Viking. Much like RG3 in Washington, his career in Minnesota is certainly a question of what if now. No, Christian Ponder and Teddy Bridgewater didn't exactly work out as first-round picks, but JJ McCarthy could. That is, if the Vikings help him develop. Luckily for JJ McCarthy, life is easier as an NFL quarterback when you have an elite wide receiver to throw the ball to, and McCarthy will have that in Justin Jefferson. You can't say enough about just how good Jefferson has been in the pros. He only played in 10 games last year because of a hamstring injury and still had over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns on 68 receptions. The season before, Jefferson had 128 receptions and 1,809 yards, both led the league by the way, and he also added 8 touchdowns on his way to winning Offensive Player of the Year. Last year, the Vikings took Jordan Addison 23rd overall, and he put together a good rookie season with 70 catches, 900 yards, and 10 touchdowns. The Vikings have a great 1-2 punch at wide receiver. Not to mention, TJ Hawkinson is there at tight end. In his first full season in Minneapolis, Hawk had 960 yards and 95 receptions, both career highs for him, and he added 5 touchdowns. There are some serious pass catchers on the Vikings roster, and Minnesota's O-line was also much better last season than the season before. Right tackle Brian O'Neill, right guard Ed Ingram, and left guard Blake Brandel are all returning starters. But left tackle Christian Darrisaw is the name to know. He's already an elite tackle, and he may be the most important player on the roster when it comes to the development of JJ McCarthy. I mean, it's either him or Justin Jefferson. Head coach Kevin O'Connell is entering his 3rd season in Minnesota, and it's time for him to develop a young quarterback. He's had consistency at the position for a while now. It was Kirk Cousins for the Vikings, and before that, he was the Rams offensive coordinator and had Matthew Stafford. It'll be a change-up not having a proven veteran running his offense, and instead, maybe a rookie. JJ McCarthy is the big-name quarterback that the Vikings took in the first round, but it wasn't their only first-round pick. The Vikings traded up to 17 at the draft to take outside linebacker Dallas Turner. He was the 9th best recruit in the 2021 class and committed to play for Nick Saban at Alabama. He spent the beginning of his freshman season on special teams and part of the Crimson Tide's pass rush rotation before he started in 3 games. He played in every game, recording 30 tackles and 8.5 sacks. In 2021, Turner got 10 starts and played in 13 games with 37 tackles and 4 sacks. Last season, though, was his true breakout campaign. He started in every game and had 53 tackles and 10 sacks. Turner was even a consensus All-American for his efforts. He was really good at Alabama. He just had to wait his turn. But that probably won't be the same in Minnesota. He could slide right in across Jonathan Grenard this season in that Brian Flores defense. The Vikings are definitely set up for the future, but they're already behind the 8 ball when it comes to the rest of the NFC North. Minnesota won the division in 2022 after going 13-4, but they lost in the wild card to the Giants. Now, it looks like the NFC North is Detroit's to lose. The Lions had a lot of success last season. They rolled through the season to the NFC Championship, where they eventually lost to the 49ers. Head coach Dan Campbell is doing a great job there in Detroit, and Jared Goff is also playing really well. Then, if you look at the Packers, who used to own the division, their future is also bright. Jordan Love exceeded expectations in year 1 as the starter. Green Bay is young and should only get better. Then there's the Bears, who just drafted Caleb Williams 1st overall and took Rome Odunze 8 picks later. Chicago has a bright future now too. This was a big draft for the Vikings. They have to hit pretty much on everything to ensure that they don't end up behind in the NFC North. But it's kind of hard to say if their future looks better than the Packers or Bears right now. JJ McCarthy needs to be a hit. Minnesota clearly took him for a reason, but the Vikes need a quarterback, and hopefully he can be the guy.